As of October 22nd, it's officially been a whole year since Sonic X Shadow Generations released to the public, and I'm here today to talk a little bit more about it in hindsight. Recency bias is a bitch, and so I figured now that a full year has passed, it's safe to say my thoughts on this game have cemented pretty heavily. I can clearly see what I think is good about the game and what I think is not so good. So join me as... what is that? Join me? Why do people say that? You're not joining me, you're watching a video snacking on corn nuts. But yeah, let's take a look at Shadow Generations in retrospect after 1 year of release. So, there's a few things I want to talk about in length, but I feel as though I should probably get the things I have to say less about out of the way first. Before all this though, I'd be really grateful if you could subscribe. I'm trying to hit 7K by the end of the year, and with your support, man, I hate doing this whole shtick. There's not a fun or entertaining way to talk about this ever. You get the ordeal. I hate writing these in my script. Without further ado, number one, the story. I think the story of Shadow Generations is pretty alright. As a short recap, Shadow gets trapped in his own white space during the events of Sonic Generations, and the effects of white space bring back Maria and Gerald from their respective times, giving Shadow a reunion and proper closure. Black Doom is also here and tries to corrupt Shadow and turn him evil pretty much, but because of Maria's guidance and the resilience of his own heart, he's able to overcome the darkness and use the powers Black Doom bestowed upon him against him. That's pretty badass. It's a solid story, however my main gripe is that I didn't really feel much throughout. There was never a part of the story where I'd say I got emotional. Shadow's tear falling in the wind at the end was very sweet, but I never got as emotional as other people seemed to. I don't think they utilized the reunion of Gerald and Maria as much as they could have. Now, I'm not saying we should have had a 20-minute scene of Shadow sitting down and talking with them, breaking down in tears, because that's dumb, and also, we've only got so much cutscene budget here, I understand that. However, their reunion feels a little wasted. I expected a slightly stronger reaction from Shadow upon realizing they're alive, at least temporarily. There's not enough interactions either, in my opinion. I just don't believe that the game sells you enough on Shadow's emotion towards the situation, and that's my main problem. People were calling this story peak, amazing, and it definitely is good. However, I do think there's a bit more to be desired. However, the characters that are there are written really well in my opinion. I like the interactions Shadow has with everyone on the map. The Ian Flynn references are also really balanced here. They don't feel annoying whatsoever. It's written well, just wanted a bit more. Number 2, the music. I think the music in this game is okay. There's some remixes in the game which I find to be quite nice, like Space Colony Arc Act 1, Chaos Island Act 1, yes I like that song, but for the most part, something about these remixes are lacking. I feel like a lot of them fail to encapsulate the feeling their original songs held. They feel almost watered down in a way. Rail Canyon and Sunset Heights I think are the two biggest contenders for what I'm talking about. The original songs themselves weren't my favorite, don't get me wrong, but there's undoubtedly something that's missing here. For lack of a better term, these renditions feel a bit more generic. For those two songs specifically, they made the focal genre rock, which is fine. We all love rock in our Sonic, and plus the original songs were rock, they just kind of amp it up a little. However, the way that they've done it, at least in my opinion, makes it sound less like a Sonic rock song and more like a video game rock cover on YouTube. I feel like in an attempt to make it more rock, they've slightly missed the vision of the originals. Also, the mixing. The mixing is a large factor on why some of these songs just don't sound as good. This is something also very prominent in Crossworld, as I think a lot of the songs there suffer from so-so mixing. With the mixing alongside the issues I mentioned before, it leads to songs that I feel are largely inferior to their originals. Let me play the two back to back super quickly. Now, music is subjective, so it's completely fine if you disagree with me entirely on this, but these are just my opinions. Speaking of opinions, people seem to have a strong distaste towards the usage of EDM in some of these songs. Now, a large part of this is completely subjective, I'm aware, but I'm actually going to defend the usage of it. I like some of these songs, I dislike some of these songs. I don't believe the problem is the genre itself. I feel like saying EDM doesn't belong in Sonic is very ingenuous and a bit hypocritical. The songs I talked about earlier aren't the greatest, part of the problem being that they tried to make them more rock-oriented. Does that mean that rock is the problem? Obviously not, as people love rock in Sonic. I think the problem is that EDM music in Sonic hasn't reached the peak of rock music in Sonic. It doesn't help that the genre was blended into a soundtrack that already isn't the greatest. I just think the genre hasn't reached anywhere near its peak in the franchise, and that's why people take issue with it. Okay, now is when I talk about the stuff that most of you care about. The levels, the gameplay, and everything surrounding them. There is a lot I have to say about these levels, and a lot of what I have to say are negatives, so I'd like to preface and say despite the negatives and criticisms I have with these levels, I am a big fan of most of these levels. I am a big fan of this game as well. I like Shadow Generations. Let's just put that, let's just nail that into your mind real quick. I like this video game quite a lot. It's like a 7 or 8 out of 10. Things can have a lot of flaws and still be good. Plus, flaws are way easier to point out than positives. We clear? Alright, Shadow Generations is a pseudo-boost game in the sense that it is in fact a boost game, it has a boost, but the boost itself operates differently enough, alongside Shadow controlling way more like Sonic and Frontiers rather than Sonic and Unleashed. The game feels like a combination of Adventure 1, Unleashed, and to a lesser extent Frontiers. Now, having a combination of different playstyles is completely fine. Great even. I'd be a hypocrite if I said it wasn't, because the game I'm working on, Sonic Daybreak, is in fact a combination of styles. I feel like the mark was missed here though. A combination is completely fine. A combination of styles work if you're able to incorporate the best of each style and combine them into one, taking the strengths of each to turn it into this beautiful, unified playstyle. However, the problem is, it seems like a lot of the best parts of these playstyles don't exist or aren't as strong as they were. It seems to be a combination of Adventure, Unleashed, and Frontiers. Frontiers, just because of how the character controls, and Adventure/Unleashed from a level design sense. I don't feel as though the best parts of each game are present here, however, leading to a mixture of gameplay styles that fail to reach the peak of their respective games, and feels ultimately inferior because of that. You get the boost and reaction-oriented gameplay of Unleashed, however, the speed has been lowered to something more akin to Adventure, so you won't be going at thrilling speeds, and your reaction time windows aren't as strict. You play at similar speeds to Adventure, yet the levels aren't as platformer-oriented and less about player expression, leading to the most fun parts of Adventure being absent. There are a couple of bits in this game that feel very reminiscent of Sonic Adventure 1's levels, or more so skips. There are times where you can make a daring jump off whatever route you're on and end up skipping a homing chain and what have you. However, these bits are very few and far between and also feel less satisfying due to the way you perform them, often being the spear glide, which I'll be talking about a bit more later. Now, what this means for the quality of the levels doesn't instantly attribute them to being bad. I think they are worse than most levels from Unleashed and Adventure, but that's only because they don't reach the peak of those levels. These levels feel like good Sonic stages, just without the best parts. Now, that doesn't make them bad. Far from it. It's just that because of this, none of these stages really have their wow moment, or bit that's so good it becomes synonymous with the level. Most of the best Sonic stages have parts of them that you can briefly describe, and people will be like, oh, yeah, that stage, that's a good one. There's not a lot of that in Shadow Generations, I feel. There aren't many sections of levels I can look at and be like, oh, that bit is great. So while these levels very clearly don't reach the peak of other levels, it's still very good. I need to make that point very clear, or else people will think I hate this game and start bitching about it. Now, while I do have one more big gripe with some levels, I think that can wait until later, so let me talk about the actual positives. For the most part, these levels have an incredible flow state that are usually able to match that of vanilla Generations despite the lowered speed. Sonic Team took the linear brain-dead hallway critiques from Forces to heart, as we have stages that require constant attention from the player. There is always something happening in these stages. If I could describe this game's flow state in one word, I'd say that it feels snappy. The chain of inputs and movements in this game often feel rhythmic in a way. Whether this was intentional or not, it's what I feel playing the game. Because of this, alongside several other numerous factors, which I don't feel diving into detail about, stages feel really fun to speedrun, and not only that, they feel a bit refreshing. Speedrunning this game doesn't really feel like speedrunning SA1, or Unleashed, or Generations, or anything. It has a speedrunning identity of sorts that's solely its. I'm glad they also decided to open things up a bit here. Now, I'm not talking Sonic GT levels of open here, god no. More something similar to Generations, except maybe a little bit more open. Certain areas get to breathe a little, and this is only a good thing, as 9 times out of 10, this makes way for more player expression and freedom. Chaos Island is a stage that really benefits from this. There's plenty of areas that truly benefit from the more open nature of this game, especially when it comes to skipping. Because there's more room to breathe, there's also more room to skip, and this game has plenty of opportunities for skips if you play your cards right. A dream for casual speedrunning. There also exists another dream for casual speedrunning in the game called spear gliding. I will talk about it later. Also, this is a sort of late addition to the script, but why do the 2D levels fuck so hard? This is the best. Hands down, a boost-style character as controlled in 2D. These 2D levels not only include the best parts of 3D levels, but somehow manage to straight up overtake them at points. The level design is some of the strongest it's ever been in a 2D perspective like this, and that's kinda crazy. Just constant action across the board. I mentioned how the 3D stages have a great flow state with constant actions being executed, which is true, but I actually think you do more here. Anyways, the 2D stages I actually like better than the main ones are Rail Canyon, Kingdom Valley, and Sunset Heights. Genuinely, my only gripe is that I wish these stages were like a minute longer. Kingdom Valley's length is fine, but Sunset Heights and Rail Canyon are about 2 minutes, and man, those are some good 2 minutes, but I wish they were a good 3 minutes. One thing I failed to mention about this game is Shadow's moveset. Unique to this game, Shadow has several additions to his moveset in the form of Doom powers. Powers seemingly bestowed upon him by Black Doom for story reasons. Doom Spear, Blast, Surf, Morph, and Wings. Chaos Spear is a souped up version of a normal Shadow ability, Chaos Spear. Hey, heads up, late minute edition. I just realized that I call the Doom Spear Chaos Spear so much because I looked at my script and I only wrote Chaos Spear. So, oopsie. It can hit up to 5 targets at a time instead of the usual 1. The Doom Spear has 2 primary functions. Number 1 is hitting switch and similar objects, and number 2 is stunning enemies and disabling the shields of certain enemies. The Doom Spear acts as a reactionary move. A switch comes into view, hurry and Chaos Spear before you miss it. Usually the result of a failed Doom Spear is you being slowed down temporarily. Easiest example here is in Space Colony Act 2, where there's a switch right ahead of you that opens a door. Spear it before you get close enough to the door, and the door will open, letting you run through without losing any speed. React too late, and that poor hedgehog will awkwardly slam into the door, and you gotta wait a second until the spear is done. This is a good challenge with a very fair and balanced fail scenario. If you fuck up, you won't die, but you will feel like a moron if you end up halted completely in your tracks for a split second. Later on, the stakes get a little higher, but not by much. The way it operates feels very similar to the slide, if anything, as it has the exact same fail-succeed scenarios. If you succeed, you'll keep your speed. Fail, and you likely won't die or take damage, but you will be temporarily halted. Funny enough, the slide is in this game, but it remains completely useless. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm not sure if there is a single point in the game where you actually need a slide. Just kind of odd. Next is the Doom Blast, and it's pretty simple. There will be these certain enemies that you're able to perform a Doom Blast on by holding the homing attack button. This will shoot them up at the sky as Shadow teleports up to them shortly after. You can then aim where you want to kick them to and teleport to them. This is pretty exclusively used to get to different routes and shortcuts, and it's used pretty well and feels nice. The only downside is that you know what the outcome will be nearly every time, but that's not really a problem to be honest, more so a nitpick. The Doom Surf is really simple. Upon coming in contact with water, Shadow will sprout a surfboard. When on it, he continuously goes forward, and you're only able to steer him and jump/homing attack. While it is simple, they utilize it quite well, as some of the areas it's used in are pretty open, giving you a lot of options despite the move itself having a minuscule moveset. I like it. It's not as fun as just being on the ground, but the sections usually occupy the right amount of time for me to be completely fine with their inclusion. The Doom Morph is a strange one. Most people understand it now, but back when the game released, this one was really controversial. The way it was taught and tutorialized made it seem like a Spider-Man swing of swords, and while that's partially true, half of it was something entirely different. Shadow will enter this form upon coming in contact with these purple ooze balls. Yeah, I don't have a better way to describe it. He'll then turn into this fucking thing. The way he operates it is by going pretty fast on these purple trails, but he has a secondary ability that allows him to swing on these floating goop balls. Again, really sorry. What the game fails to properly mention is that if you let go of the swing right as he reaches the max descent of it, he'll shoot straight up. Knowing this completely changes the level. Yep, no plural there, just one level. He's only on one level. That's my only complaint, I think, by the way. But this turns it into my personal favorite Doom power. It's also the fastest Shadow is able to go in this game, I think, as you're given this incremental boost when on the aforementioned purple trails that goes pretty damn fast. Oh, and then I didn't even remember to put this in the script, but the Doom Wings. I don't have much to say about him because it's literally just an unlockable supersonic form, pretty much. It's cool, it's broken. It's not like the most fun, but it's not really, you're not really supposed to use it a lot. It's just a toggleable supersonic, which I think is really cool, so I can't complain about it at all. All of these Doom powers do a great job at adding to the level they occupy. I think they're used very well in largely in creative ways. My biggest issue though is that I just don't think they were used enough. I can understand something like the Doom Morph being used as what is essentially a stage gimmick, but things like the Doom Spear, Blast, and Surf, I kinda wish they were used just a little more. I said that they were used creatively, and while I think that's true, I don't think the creative peak of them was reached. These moves are largely one note with no real skill ceiling to occupy each of them. There's this strange secondary ability to the Doom Blast specifically, where if you push B as the enemy soaring forward, you can actually prematurely stop the move before the enemy reaches the endpoint. This is never used as far as I'm aware. Brickery Box said something similar to this in his video, but why was this not used? Having a shortcut that could only get taken if you stop prematurely would be a really cool addition and would add an extra layer of interaction to the move. Unfortunately, it's not. All in all though, I'm a big fan of these Doom powers. I just think a little more could have been done. Okay, let's talk about spear gliding. In this game, Shadow has a pretty noticeable amount of air drag. Now, this hasn't really been a problem in past games because it was baked in very naturally and didn't feel like it was killing your speed necessarily. It was very balanced. It felt like a way to keep you from getting off extremely easy skips. It made you work for them a little, and the biggest thing, it didn't feel like shit. In Shadow Generations, when you jump, you lose nearly all of your speed, and it feels pretty awful. However, remember the Chaos Spear I mentioned earlier? If you spam that a while in the air, Shadow will have 0 about air drag. I am extremely mixed on this for a couple of reasons. Firstly, this is definitely not intentional. A lot of people were saying that it was, but that's just not true. I don't think they patched it out because, well, to put it lightly, spear gliding completely changes the game, and removing it would be too big of a change. Spear gliding has some pros and cons. I'll start with the pros, as I feel as though they're very evident and clear. Spear gliding, straight up, is fun. It is fun to spear glide. It's fun to take these daring jumps and hit some pretty crazy skips. And on top of that, it isn't mindless. It's not a free skip button. The way it works is that while spear gliding, you don't really have any control of shadow, meaning you have to line them up if you're trying to skip a good chunk of a section. On top of this, you have to spam it, or the air drag will kick back in. You're able to get one direction change, as you can double jump boost out of your current spear glide and into another if you do need a reposition. Because of this, the spear glide has a really solid skill ceiling. Easy to do, hard to master. I'm not a fan of the fact that it trivializes a core limitation set in place by the game. Air drag is just not a thing because of this, and I'm not sure how to feel. While I said it has a skill ceiling, which it does, you're able to do a lot with just basic spear gliding knowledge. This completely warps speedruns and how you play the game in general. The question I face is, should something this broken be this easily accessible? I really don't think it should. But then we face another problem. Air drag is not fun. It's not a fun balance in like other games. It doesn't make you think outside the box. It doesn't let you get creative. It strictly limits what you can do. Air drag feels horrible, and the reality is that I believe spear gliding makes the game a lot more fun. Playing this game without spear gliding after playing it with spear gliding, it kind of feels like fucking dog shit. We have this problem where there's a very easy exploit you can pull off that completely changes how you play the game and trivializes a clear limitation set in place, yet without it, the game would honestly be much worse. I almost have to like its existence, because no matter how broken I think it is, if I believe it makes the game more fun, well, case closed. Ideally, I wish they struck a proper balance with air drag. Make it so it doesn't feel miserable, but put something in place so where you do have to work around it a little. I really don't like this at all. I really don't like this all or nothing scenario this has become. A middle ground would work perfectly in my opinion. It would still allow you to pull off some crazy skips, but they would be harder and a bit more limiting while still letting you get creative. Spear gliding is really fucking strange, huh? Now, the final thing I'd like to talk about this game. Recency bias has worn off, and I think a lot of people are starting to realize these Doom zones kind of suck. Like, bad. In a couple of stages, you'll get this cinematic of Doom's eyes showing up and sending you to what is essentially Radical Highway. Now, this is a pretty neat concept, and every single one of these cinematics kick ass. They're really cool. However, the problem is, well, there's a lot of problems. For one thing, this completely breaks the pace of stages they're in. All of a sudden, you're thrust into this 10-second unskippable cutscene, which may be really cool the first couple of times, but after you've seen it a bunch, you're sort of just ready to get back into the action. Unfortunately, this brings up another problem. When you do return to gameplay, there is very little action to speak of. For some weird reason, each of these Doom zones have pretty mind-numbing level design. Shadow Generations does a great job at addressing the linear hallway problem Forces had, as I mentioned way earlier. Unfortunately, that goes completely out of the window when it comes to Doom zones. This is Forces level design for the most part. Boost forward, small homing chain, boost forward again, small cinematic. What happened? Why is the game suddenly extremely easy? You could make a case that Space Colony Arc has the excuse of being easier to ease you in more, but it'd also be a stupid one considering easing you into what? These zones don't have any new mechanics or anything. It's just an extension of the level with new theming. It doesn't get better either. Rail Canyon and Sunset Heights has these as well, and they don't really get any harder. It treats it each and every time like it's easing you into a new level. It's not a new level. So what's the need for this sudden babying of the player? It especially hurts with Sunset Heights, as that's a stage that I find to be really good, but unfortunately it has the same problem in Forces where it just kind of feels like it gets cut off too early. Right as the stage starts getting really good, sudden interruption, goodbye Sunset Heights. And it really stings as well, considering Rail Canyon actually sent you back after the Doom Zone for another minute for some more Rail Canyon. I was expecting the same for Sunset Heights, and it's just, nope, end of the stage. Really disappointing. Now, as I wrap the video up, I'm sure there's a few other things I could have talked about, but I didn't. It's largely because I just didn't really care in all honesty, and didn't have a lot to say. I didn't even bring up the open world because I really don't have anything to say. It's pretty fun, it's alright, I'd like collecting. I don't really have a strong opinion towards it though. Same with the boss fights and challenges. The challenges are fun, the bosses are pretty fun. That's about it. This isn't a huge comprehensive review of absolutely everything in the game, rather the things that I thought should be talked about with recency bias thrown out of the window. My thoughts on the open world, challenges, and bosses haven't really changed over time, while things like the levels, certain negatives, and more have. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, especially considering it's a bit of a longer one. If you did enjoy, why not consider becoming a patron for as low as $2.50 a month? It'd really help out a lot, so if you can, I'd be super grateful. With everything said, drop your thoughts on Shadow Generations in the comments. I'm curious what you guys think. I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace.